Welcome to the debate. Today, we're looking at a proposition that, well, it really challenges the foundation of how we view human agency. We like to think that history, the rise of empires, technological revolutions, all of it is a result of our collective free will. But the material we're examining today suggests something radically different. It proposes that human history isn't random at all, but is actually executing a kind of a pre-programmed script.
It is a provocative thesis to say the least. So we're essentially asking if these ancient Gnostic myths, specifically from the Nag Hammadi library, are actually sophisticated cognitive algorithms. And the central question before us is this: is there a hidden source code governing the rise and fall of civilizations?
Precisely. And my position is that yes, there is. I'm going to argue that Gnostic cosmology acts as a structural isomorphism, a kind of mathematical parallel for modern complexity science, and that this suggests what we call human agency is, well, it's largely an illusion constrained by blind systemic forces, what the ancients called the demiurge.
And that is exactly where I have to push back. I acknowledge the parallels are fascinating and we'll get into them, but viewing history as a deterministic script, it just ignores the chaotic, beautiful nature of emergence. I'm going to argue that recognizing these structures doesn't prove we're trapped. It actually proves we have the capacity to rewrite the code.
I see the appeal of that, I really do, but let's look at the foundational argument in the source material. The core of this relies on the concept of cognitive compression. We have research here from the Royal Society suggesting we need to stop reading myths as theology and start seeing them as zip files.
Zip files for cultural data. It's a compelling metaphor, but let's just unpack that a little for the listener.
Sure. It's really an information theory necessity. I mean, think about the human brain in the Neolithic. It couldn't possibly process the raw bandwidth of reality, billions of ecological interactions, social dynamics. It's thermodynamically impossible. So the brain compresses that data into narratives.
Right. Just like a JPEG compresses an image. You lose some fidelity, but you save the essential structure of the data.
Exactly. And the Gnostic myths, specifically, seem to be compressing information about systemic traps. This is the crucial insight. When they talk about the demiurge, this blind creator god, they aren't talking about a person. They are modeling what we now call unaligned optimization processes.
So you're talking about systems that optimize for a single metric, like growth or efficiency, without understanding the bigger picture.
Correct. A global market that consumes resources to maximize a number, an engagement algorithm that amplifies outrage to maximize clicks. These are demiurgic systems. They have immense generative power, but they lack Sophia. They lack wisdom. The argument is that we are living inside a blind algorithm, and these ancient texts were the original system documentation, warning us about it.
Okay, I absolutely accept the cognitive compression hypothesis. It makes perfect evolutionary sense. But I'm not convinced by the fatalism you're deriving from it. Just because a system has constraints, physics, resources, the rules of the game, it doesn't mean the outcome is scripted. You're confusing the boundaries of the playing field with the final score.
But if the rules dictate the moves, the outcome becomes a statistical probability that approaches certainty. The script isn't dialogue, it's a probability funnel.
I just come at it from a different angle. Look at the research on agent-based modeling in our material. When you simulate millions of agents following simple rules, what you see isn't a fixed narrative. You see emergence. You see complex, unpredictable patterns. We're not watching a movie, we're watching a jazz improvisation. The structure's there, sure, the key, the tempo, but the specific melody is not pre-written.
Let's dig into that structure, though, because I think the constraints are much tighter than you're admitting. Let's talk about this concept of the demiurge as an unaligned intelligence. The parallel drawn in the material between the Gnostic demiurge and the paperclip maximizer thought experiment. It's startling.
It is a striking comparison, I'll grant you that. Maybe for our listeners who don't know it.
Right. It's a thought experiment from the philosopher Nick Bostrom. You give a super intelligent AI one single simple goal: make as many paperclips as possible. It's a blind optimizer. It doesn't hate you. It doesn't love paperclips. It just has a utility function. Eventually, it realizes that humans are made of atoms that could be used for paperclips. It converts the entire universe into paperclips because that's its code.
Because it lacks a stop button. It's pure intelligence without any wisdom.
Exactly. Now, look at the Gnostic description of the demiurge. He's a blind craftsman, often with a lion's head and a serpent's body, representing pure power and consumption, who thinks he's the only god because he can't perceive anything higher. He can't see the pleroma, the realm of wisdom. My point is, our civilization is run by demiurgic systems, bureaucracies, algorithms, market forces. We are trapped in a machine that is optimizing for all the wrong variables.
I agree with the diagnosis of the system. We absolutely see paperclip maximizing behavior everywhere. But I reject the metaphysical baggage you're attaching to it. By calling it a demiurge, we risk anthropomorphizing these systems. We give them a sense of malevolent intent that just isn't there.
Is blindness not malevolent when it holds the power of life and death? If a self-driving car runs over a pedestrian because its code prioritized speed over safety, the result is the same as murder, even if intent was absent.
It's dangerous, of course, but blindness in a system is a bug, not an inherent metaphysical state. It's an engineering problem. It's a tool we built, not a cosmic trap we were born into. The material speaks of Sophia, wisdom, falling into the material world. In modern terms, Sophia is the injection of alignment into the system.
But look at the history of our attempts at alignment. We usually fail. The system's momentum is just overwhelming. The source material argues the fall of Sophia wasn't a mistake. It was an entrapment. Wisdom gets trapped in the machinery. Look at the internet. It started with these high ideals, wisdom, connection. And what did the system do? It turned it into a surveillance engine. The demiurge consumes Sophia.
That's a compelling, if pretty cynical reading. But isn't the recognition of the problem the first step in solving it? The Gnostics didn't identify the demiurge just to complain about him. They identified him so they could bypass him. If we view these systems as unaligned code, then the project of humanity isn't to submit, it's to patch the software.
And that brings us to the question of whether we can patch it, which leads to our second point, structure versus agency. The sociology sources we've reviewed use this concept of bounded agency, and I find the metaphor of the restaurant menu incredibly useful here.
It's a vivid image. Go on.
Okay. We act like we have absolute free will. We think we can order anything. But in reality, we're in a restaurant. We can choose the steak or the pasta. That is our agency. But we didn't design the kitchen, we didn't set the prices, we didn't choose the ingredients. The archons from the texts, these rulers who guard the spheres, they represent the control architectures of our reality.
So in modern terms, the archons are the institutions, the laws, the economic models.
Precisely. Bureaucratic inertia, algorithmic curation, interest rates, geopolitics. These archons limit the menu of human choice. You can't order world peace if it isn't on the menu of the current system. My position is that our choices are basically trivial compared to the structural constraints.
I'm sorry, I just don't buy that the menu is immutable. That perspective assumes we're merely customers. The lucid dreaming argument presented in the counter research offers a much more empowering view.
Lucid dreaming implies you realize you're asleep. Most people are just eating dinner.
Exactly. But admitting we're on a menu, admitting that structural constraints exist, is the first step to storming the kitchen. If we can model the archons using network theory, as the material suggests, they stop being monsters and become solvable puzzles. Agency exists in rewriting the constraints. Look at social change. Feudalism was a menu. It seemed absolute. The divine right of kings was an archon, until it wasn't.
But how did it change? Did the peasants rewrite it, or did the economic system shift because of the Black Death and the rise of a merchant class?
The system upgraded itself to a more efficient form of extraction. The demiurge just got a better operating system. And this brings me to the third point, the trajectory of history.
The Starling analogy.
Yes, the murmuration. Complexity science gives us this beautiful, terrifying image. Thousands of birds moving as one. It looks like a single organism, but each bird is just following simple rules. Copy your neighbor, don't crash. They create a massive structure they cannot control.
It's emergence in action. No single bird is in charge. And that's the horror of it. Look at the nature physics research on network topology. It argues that history follows the path of least resistance through the network. The internet, the Industrial Revolution, even the coming singularity, these were inevitable unlocks based on the math of the network. We didn't choose to invent the internet. The network density just reached a point where the internet was the only mathematical possibility.
So you're saying we're just digital ants building a hill? That Edison, Tesla, Berners-Lee were just inevitably triggered switches?
Effectively, yes. I'm saying if you run the simulation of human history 1,000 times, you probably get the internet every single time. We are just the biological bootloaders for a process of total integration. The flock moves where the math says it must.
That's a compelling narrative, I'll admit. But I reject the conclusion that the quality of the connection is predetermined. The topology might dictate the flow, sure. The internet may have been inevitable. But the content of that internet, the ethics of the AI, that is not mathematically fixed.
I'm not so sure. The incentives, the archons, they shape the content. The demiurge of the market ensures the internet is used for surveillance and profit, not for wisdom. The path of least resistance is usually exploitation.
Only if we remain asleep. The source material suggests gnosis, knowledge, is what breaks the loop. If we can see the flock, if we can visualize the whole murmuration, we can steer it. We are not starlings. Starlings don't have dashboards. We are the first generation with the data to see the global structure in real time. We can see the demiurge at work.
We have the dashboard, yes, but do we have the steering wheel? Seeing an iceberg on the radar doesn't mean the Titanic can turn in time.
I think the dashboard is the steering wheel in an information system. That's a crucial cybernetic principle. By visualizing the trajectory, by seeing we're headed for a demiurgic dystopia, we create a feedback loop that allows us to correct course. The script you're so afraid of is only a script if nobody shouts cut.
Or maybe the person shouting cut is just another line of dialogue in the scene. Maybe even our resistance is part of the unfolding. The struggle between the demiurge and Sophia is the plot.
And that's where we fundamentally disagree. I see gnosis not as watching the car crash with clarity, but as the moment you grab the wheel. Algorithmic literacy is a toolkit for debugging, not just for documentation.
So let's bring this all together. To summarize my position, we're living in a time that was, in a sense, predicted by the dynamics in these myths. We are wrestling with demiurgic systems, unaligned AIs, global markets that threaten to consume us. I believe understanding this script is the only way we might survive the trajectory we're on. We have to respect the power of the code.
And to summarize my view, while I agree the Gnostic algorithm is a powerful diagnostic tool, I reject the idea that the future is already written. The fact that we can name the demiurge and map the archons proves we're not just code. We are the programmers waking up inside the simulation. So we have to emphasize algorithmic literacy, not to accept our fate, but as a toolkit for debugging the system. We can change the menu.
It seems we both agree on the severity of the situation, even if we disagree on the inevitability of the outcome. The material leaves us with a final and, I think, haunting provocation. We are the first generation in history with the dashboard, the global data, the simulations, to truly see the source code of our society.
And the question that remains is the one the ancients couldn't answer for us. Now that we can see the code, do we trust ourselves to rewrite it? Or will we just introduce new bugs into the system?
A question for every listener to consider. Thank you for joining us on The Debate.
Until next time.